Alrighty, folks. I have followed the career of Jesse Ventura for a long time. Author of the most famous book he wrote was probably Democrypts and Republicans, No More Gangs in Government. And he was always a staunch independent. He was very stubborn in his refusal to endorse any duopoly candidates. As a matter of fact, in 2016, he offered his endorsement to Bernie Sanders under the condition that Bernie not endorse Hillary if and when he lost the nomination. And Bernie blew him off, did not make any such promise. And so Ventura said, if I can't trust you not to fold in the general election, should you lose the nomination, then I'm not going to be able to endorse your run. And I thought that was admirable. And I've always found Jesse Ventura to be quite admirable, if not a bit of a softie at certain points. And so that's why, actually, this is not as surprising to me as it is to some people, but we'll talk about it after. Here he is giving his endorsements to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
I'm going to be selfish. A few years ago, I got the opportunity to see the United States elect its first black president. I didn't think that could ever happen, and they even re-elected him. Well, now I'm going to be selfish again. I've only got a few elections to go. I'm 73 years old now, so the window's closing. I want to be alive to see the first woman president of the United States of America and the first woman commander-in-chief, and we've got her right now.
I've always been a
much for sharing your views.
That was my nickname in the service, Poon Chaser. So I want to see pussy up in that Oval Office there. And I have it on very reliable information that she's got one. I've heard it from a lot of people, and I'm not going to get into details there. But a lot of people who can verify that if Kamala Harris is the president, there will be pussy up in that White House.
Yeah, you should have said that. That would have been great TV.
On this issue, I think a lot of people have been very interested to hear what you have said. So you are officially endorsing the Harris-Walz ticket, excuse me.
Yes, I want to see a woman president. It's time for a woman president. We men have screwed it up enough. And
okay. All right. So that's the bit of sound that went kind of viral. And, you know, a lot of people are shocked by this because, yes, he has been post-duopoly. Ventura ran for governor as an independent in 1998 in the state of Minnesota, obviously Tim Walz's state there, and won. And it has always been my opinion that the key to Ventura's success as a candidate, as an independent candidate, has been not so much that he's this complete off-the-wall maverick who takes these very unorthodox positions, but more that he is this mix of red and blue. Yep. And so he's able to appeal to Republicans with, say, his pro-Second Amendment views. But he's also able to appeal to libs and Democrats because he's pro-choice. And economically, he's very populist and vague. His position on healthcare is everyone should be able to go to the doctor when they're sick. Doesn't really tell you how, but, you know, so he makes a nod toward universal healthcare without pissing off the conservatives or socialized medicine, right? He was a talented politician in that way, which is why he won as an independent. But he really won by appealing to both red and blue voters with red and blue policies and cultural signaling. He is plausible as both a Navy SEAL underwater demolitions expert and a pot-smoking hippie because he is both. Right. He is like sincerely both of those things. And so everybody likes him, right? He's a hard guy not to like. He really is. Now, the exception to this is his views on 9/11 were my views from, October 2022. I mean, October 2002, sorry. And back in the day, this guy would go on. He'd get invited on like mainstream TV shows on CNN, on Fox, and MSNBC, and he would talk that shit, and he would just trigger them so hard. One time, the Fox News guy got up off the set and walked out. So I love that about him, and I'll always respect him greatly for that. And I do think he's a nice guy. But he has gone soft in recent years. On the COVID stuff, he was a total conformist. On January 6th, one of the real hand riggers, January's there.
Was he?
Treason. Yeah. Oh yeah, big into that. So he's lost his edge, and he never had that hard an edge. He had a hard edge on certain issues. The 9/11 stuff triggered a lot of people, but for the most part,
that was a hard one at that time.
It was. Credit where credit's due. And he was elected in 98, and then he did not run for a second term in 2002, and I suspect he said it was because they dragged him through the mud and he wasn't up to it, and I believe that to a certain extent, but I also believe he felt because of his views on 9/11 was going to be really hard to maintain a political career, given his opinions on that.
Fair enough.
That is speculation. But the point is, outside of the 9/11 stuff, he's always had some Republican opinions and some Democrat opinions, which is why he kind of appeals to a broad enough swath of the electorate to get him elected governor. But he's not he's not Jill Stein, he's not RFK, he's not like off the spectrum. He's just a mix of both. And so it doesn't really surprise me that he did this, especially since he's softened in his old age. He endorsed Tim Walz for governor in 2022. It's kind of sad to see, but then again, since he quit his stint as governor, he's chirped about running for president before and never did it. I never really sensed his heart was in it. I've always thought Ventura as like a good guy and with extreme political potential. Like if he did mount a serious third party run, I think he'd do very well. But at this point,
back in the day, man.
Back in the day. At this point, he's given up. Look, this is what I said. I said America is exhausted. This is a perfect symptom of that. Of a guy who had, this real conviction about building third parties and no more gangs in government and fuck them all. He's given up, like a lot of people have, which is why I think Kamala's surging. I think Kamala is the anesthesia. She's the anesthesia that they give you that put the brain rocks in your head before you fall asleep, before a surgery or something. Like he's over it. He wants to he wants to go quietly into that good nights. Figuratively, obviously, we wish him best of health. And that's where he's at. And it's not a shock to me that he did this. It really isn't.
It is just remarkable to me. I don't see how, if you have a politics, which at least at one time he did, a perspective, you've thought enough about politics to have policy opinions, to have views about how the government should run. I do not see how you qualify your endorsement of a candidate based on their sex. I just don't see how you do that. I want to see a woman president before I die. Okay. Well, I want to see universal health care before I die.
Yeah.
How about it? How about a woman who believes in universal health care? Would you take a man who's going to support universal health care over a woman who doesn't? You see, this is where this all falls apart. I look at political candidates the same exact way I looked at hiring people for my theater company. All things being equal, it could be a tiebreaker for me if you were of a marginalized identity group. That would weigh in your favor if everything else was equal. Talent, resume, experience, then I would go to those things. But if you were the better person for the job, I didn't care about that. I would hire you. I would hire the best person for the job. If all things were not equal. That's how I feel about politicians, man. I would favor a woman who all other things being equal.
Right.
But to just say, we got to have a woman and say, I understand why he doesn't say anything about policy because she doesn't have any.
Right. She doesn't have any.
She doesn't have any. For somebody who actually has a political perspective to accept that calculus, that, well, she's a woman. Well, okay. Yeah. That is the good in and of itself. See, Hillary ran somewhat on the idea that her campaign was the purpose of her campaign, that her election would be the purpose of her election.
Right.
This is taking that to another level because Hillary did have clear policies. They were mostly horrifying, but she had policies. She had a history in government by which to measure her views and beliefs. This is just a cipher whose campaign is about the campaign. It's about the campaign existing. That's it. It's a campaign about a campaign.
Yeah, that is true. And I think the other thing at work here is, as I said, with the January 6th stuff, Ventura does have a pretty severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. Which is kind of strange. I mean, you know, because he did know Donald Trump back in the day, and actually they were both involved, or Trump never got involved, I don't believe. But I remember Trump was flirting with a run on the Reform Party ticket around the time that Ventura was getting involved with the Reform Party. So, like, they probably have rubbed elbows. Maybe he doesn't like him. Maybe he did and doesn't anymore. Who the hell knows? But there's definitely a lot of, I mean, he said outright, January 6th should disqualify Trump from public service, which, look, I don't agree with that line of reasoning, but at least that's a line of reasoning. Why not say that on CNN? Why not just say, look, Trump is disqualified, so I'm for Harris? Like, why do you have to take such a reductive opinion as, well, she's a woman and we need a woman? Well, what if Trump dropped out and they nominated a woman with Trump's points of view? And the Democrats nominated Biden. Would you vote for the Republican woman? Like, it's just, it doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless.
Well, that's what I'll very often hit them with when they'll start. I did that with the cowbell people when they started defending, talking about how I'm calling out Michelle Obama because I'm attacking a black woman. I said, well, what about Candace Owens?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Is it okay to attack Candace Owens? Okay, so you don't believe you can never attack a black woman, right? So it's really not about that, is it? So why even throw that in there?
Please clap.